bringing the people behind our food to life.
We're going to be making cashew shortbread today, and the ingredients we have for this really simple recipe: 2/3 cup of white granulated sugar, 1.5 cups of low gluten flour, white flour, 1/4 cup rice flour, fine white rice flour, and it gives the shortbread a nice texture, keeps it from gumming up, being stiff, keeps it nice and dry. 8 ounces of cold unsalted butter. It's equivalent to 2 sticks of unsalted butter. A pinch of sea salt, and 1/2 cup of salted roasted cashew nuts. And with this recipe, you can change the nuts, put in pistachios, hazelnuts, any kind of nut, or some citrus zest or a spice. I like to do a 5-spice shortbread sometimes too. It's really easily varied, whatever you have on hand, or you could just do it plain. Little vanilla bean would be nice too. So it's really simple to make this recipe with a food processor. You can just dump all of your ingredients in there. Generally, I start with the flour before the butter so the butter doesn't stick to the machine. And the sugar, 2/3 cup sugar, rice flour, pinch of sea salt, and the butter, and your cashew nuts. You just throw everything in. The nice thing about the food processor is it will break up the nuts while it's processing the dough. But if you don't have a food processor at home, you can easily do this recipe in a stand mixer or by hand. You'll just want to make sure that your butter is extra cold. You can stick it in the freezer for a few minutes so that it doesn't melt as you're mixing it. If you're doing it by hand, a fork or a pastry knife works really well. But we're going to use this food processor today. Really quickly pulse. For a few times to get everything incorporated, and then just let it go for probably 30 seconds to a minute until you see the dough start to come together. And it'll still be fairly granulated, dry on top. That's good, as it's shortbread. You want it to stay nice and flaky and buttery when you roll it out. You can just dump it all out on your workstation. I like to use a piece of parchment paper when I'm working with doughs on the table. Keeps it from sticking, keeps your area a little cleaner. You can just bring it all together. And then favorite rolling pin. And you can either flour the top of the dough in your pin, or you can grab another sheet of parchment paper, which works really well. You can also use plastic wrap. It's a little bit harder to keep it from sticking, but it'll work in a pinch. Roll out the shortbread dough. Typically here at the bakery, we do about a 1/4 inch thickness. Keeps them thin enough to be crispy, but thick enough to have some substance, not be as thin as crackers. And I always just eyeball it. Dust the dough with a little bit of flour before you cut it out. And today I'm using a Christmas tree cookie cutter for the holidays coming up. But another great thing about shortbread, very similar to sugar cookie dough, you can use any cookie cutter depending on the occasion, holiday themed, or, simple circles, hearts, whatever you choose, shouldn't matter. The simpler shapes are easier to work with, of course. And then we're just going to cut out our trees. Place them on our sheet pan. Make sure you give them at least an inch of space between them, so they will spread a little bit. It helps when picking these up off of the table, off of your rolling area, to use a small spatula. Keeps them from losing their shape. So they tend to get a little bit sticky. And then feel free to gently press your dough back together once you've cut out as many cookies as you can with that rollout, and roll it again. Of course, you don't want to over roll the dough, but if you're not mixing it or kneading it or rolling it too much, it should be fine. Okay, let's put these in the oven. And they take approximately 10 minutes to bake in a 350-degree oven. Okay, here we have a Christmas tree cashew shortbread. You can tell when they're done by looking at them, so they'll be golden brown around the edges and firm to touch. With these cookies, the shortbread is a little less sweet than a traditional sugar cookie, so if you wanted to, you could ice them or sugar the tops of them before you bake them.